Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Logan, and one thing I find really interesting about the home theater market is how you'll see some very well thought out solutions to some very specific problems. For example, a lot of us want to experience high quality Dolby Vision content in our home theaters, but as it stands right now, it's pretty difficult to find displays other than really high-end TVs that can properly accept a Dolby Vision signal on their own. So that's why today we're going to be taking a look at one of those very specific solutions, the HDFury VRROOM 8K, a device that, among many other things, allows you to experience Dolby Vision even if your projector doesn't exactly support it. And the reason this is such a big deal is because virtually no home theater projectors made today actually support Dolby Vision content, which can be limiting if you have a 4K Blu-ray movie collection like we do, or you stream from services that offer Dolby Vision content. While devices like the Xudu players can provide this functionality thanks to their extensive video options, if you want to get this working with all the devices in your setup, or you have some incompatible devices in your chain that need just a little bit of help to provide an HDMI signal, which you can take advantage of using your projector, well, that's where the HDFury line steps in. I should quickly mention that this isn't a tutorial, just a quick look at the device itself and letting you know about some of its useful capabilities, so if it happens to solve a problem that you're experiencing in your theater, well, now you know about it. The VRROOM 8K is basically the Swiss Army knife of HDMI video processors and scalers, which were actually a really high-end piece of gear back in their heyday, but with the advent of digital video standards like HDMI, the need for older analog video switchers and scalers slowly dwindled. Nowadays, you usually see this kind of circuitry built into a processor or AV receiver. But one side effect of that is a lot of weird issues that usually crop up in relation to the different capabilities and formats presented between the HDMI chips in certain HDMI sources and displays. HDMI is a very complicated technology, and there's going to be a lot going on between, say, your Xbox and your gaming projector, for example, while you're trying to play a game. Let's say your Xbox thinks that your projector doesn't support Dolby Vision, but you want to be able to watch Dolby Vision content on your Xbox. Well, by using one of the HDFury's many conversion modes, that's going to become possible. So let's go ahead and get started by seeing what comes in the box. Of course, you'll get the VRROOM unit itself, which seems to be very well built, along with a power adapter, a DB9 serial cable, a Toslink cord, and an IR extender cable. On the front of the unit, you'll find an IR sensor, followed by the 4 HDMI 2.1 inputs labeled 0, 1, 2, and 3, and finally a relay port along with an IR-RX port. On the other side, this is where the unit gets really interesting. Here you'll find a DC power input followed by yet another 4 HDMI ports, an eARC port, an HDMI downscale port, an HDMI ARC CEC up port, and finally just an HDMI audio port. You'll also see a LAN control Ethernet port, an RS-232 serial port, and a SPDIF digital audio output. Now, all of this might seem kind of crazy at first glance, but if we break it down, it starts to make a lot more sense. The VRROOM 8K can be thought of like a really advanced HDMI switch. You have 4 inputs, and using the signals coming into the unit, you can split them out into different outputs depending on your setup. We're going to be using this in a very basic way, coming out of our AV processor into one of the HDMI input ports of the VRROOM, and finally out one of the regular full HDMI outputs into our projector. But since you have 4 outputs, you have a lot of other options for how you might use this product. Say, for example, you want to use a 4K TV, but you only have a 1080p receiver or audio processor. Well, in that case, you can just use one of the regular video outputs along with the dedicated 1080p/720p HDMI audio out and connect your system that way. In this mode, the HDFury kind of replaces the HDMI circuitry in your older processor, which is limited to 1080p. To adjust the settings and actually get the HDFury unit into the right mode to connect your devices, you can either make use of the built-in screen on top, which I think is pretty neat, or you can do what I think is really cool and plug the box into Ethernet and access the configuration menu over the network. There are literally so many options here that I would have a hard time going over each one of them and doing all the features of the VRROOM justice. Just to do what we set out to do in the beginning of the video though, which is to get Dolby Vision working on the projector, all we have to do is enable DV output and enable custom HDR for the HDMI outputs when the input has LLDV metadata. That way, whenever our content has an LLDV data layer, the HDFury will signal that and it will output a custom HDR mode. And with that, our projector will now display a close equivalent of the Dolby Vision metadata stored on a 4K Blu-ray, for example, just without the dynamic metadata. After getting this set up, we did verify that it had just about the same effect as enabling Dolby Vision on our Zadu players had. Now, I will admit this is quite a bit more complicated than your regular HDMI splitter or custom EDID converter box like the Aura unit we took a look at recently, but that device is also quite a bit more limited. And with the complexity that comes with a device like this, also comes the ability to dive deep into your system and get everything working exactly the way you want. The box and manuals explain just all what this thing is capable of doing in excruciating detail, so I invite you to check those out, and I'd be surprised if there was some kind of signal that this thing couldn't convert or process properly. In the end, if you're looking into a device like the HDFury VRROOM 8K, you probably already have a pretty good idea of what your use case is. But what I can say is, it's probably the only device on the market that has nearly this many features. It seems like everything it does extremely well. If you want to learn more or even pick one up for yourself, I'll be sure to leave a link to HDFury's website down in the description below, where you can check out the VRROOM 8K as well as all of their other HDMI related products, since that kind of seems to be their niche. And with all that said, I think that's about it. If you thought this video was helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss any of our future content. And as always, have an awesome day.